Coming in, yeah.
Let's talk transfers. Let's talk about Christian Pulisic to United, which came out when we were getting a coffee earlier.
It was so natural. That was literally the first time I came through the door, by the way.
No, we didn't have a coffee.
We didn't have a coffee. No, it was last week.
It was last week. Christian Pulisic to United. Oh my God. Like, I'm sweating under the lights, but I'm also sweating because that's just nuts. What is going on?
It's more just Man United, right? I found it quite funny because the Rabiot thing, which didn't make sense in the first place, is now collapsing, right? He ain't going there. And they're like, oh, we could go for Casemiro. And it's like...
Casemiro says wrong number.
Casemiro's like, no, thanks. Like, I'll stay at Madrid and I'll probably win the league. I might win a Champions League again. Like, why are you coming to me this late in the window, probably, is another thing. Because I quite clearly was never your third... Casemiro is now being framed as, like, United's third choice, behind De Jong and Rabiot. That's the way I'm sure a player would be looking at it, right? And
oh, yeah, absolutely.
In the case of Pulisic, like, I'm actually someone who has been quite supportive of Pulisic since he's been at Chelsea. I've always liked his anticipation inside the box. I think he has a unique skill considering his height and stature. A lot of the goals he scored for Chelsea look like classic number 9 poaching. Like, it's weird. Like, if you watch a lot of his goals back, I think he's miscast not only as a player. I think in terms of the way maybe Tuchel views him or the way people view him, but also the way I think he views himself at times. Like, I don't know if it's a case because for the US he's kind of their star guy and maybe they're playing against a lower form of opposition, so he gets more space to dribble around 5 players. And stick it in the top corner, whilst in the Premier League you don't get that space, and obviously Tuchel, I think, doesn't view him as the main guy. But I see him in a squad that doesn't have a lot of natural goal scorers. I think he is one guy that I still feel could have a big future. But listen, I'm not gonna. There's a lot of players at Chelsea in recent years who have flattered to deceive, and you know, I think being used to sort of those title-winning players who were so consistent. Like, I think that people maybe now appreciate Willian a bit more than they
still
did.
Don't.
I mean, no, the reason I say Willian is because his levels were... He could give you about 6 or 7 out of 10 most weeks, even if he was never Eden Hazard, which I think was kind of harsh on him. Because if he was in this era, I think if Willian was playing for Chelsea now, I think he'd be more appreciated or would look a better player. I think when he was with Hazard was on the other side and people were like, Eden Hazard's incredible, one of the greatest players ever played for Chelsea. But Pulisic, Ziyech, Werner, who's obviously gone now, I think a lot of those you could roll into sort of the same box and say they have nice flashes, they have injuries. Are we going to lose anything if we let them go? Could we replace them with a player who gives us more consistency over a season? Maybe that's what Tuchel's thinking. But God, don't ask me to know what's going on in Man United sort of transfer room and what they're trying to do, because it's so unpredictable, and they're just hitting darts at a board and just going.
I like him. Let's have him.
Just going for anyone at this point. I mean, Gary Neville accuses Bowley of playing Football Manager. I mean, United. Yeah, it's just crazy. So I don't know if that one will get done, to be honest, because. Unless we bring in a few attackers, I think Tuchel would just want to keep Pulisic and Ziyech around for numbers, right? Yeah.
I think Ziyech is going to go.
I think Ziyech wants to go. I think that's more... you don't have to search too hard to make the same argument about Pulisic, given his dad was posting things after that Everton game that he didn't want to be at the club, or he was frustrated of what was going on. I could see either going. It's who you replace them with that I think is pretty interesting.
I think that's what's going to be the whole situation. I mean, Anthony Gordon, I don't know how I feel about that.
So I did a video about it yesterday, and I was surprised at how many people were defending the transfer, because
I think he's a brilliant player.
Again, I just look at Callum Hudson-Odoi, and I think, I wonder what he thinks right now. Like, couldn't you give me that development time?
But then again, he's had that development time, has he not? Like, I mean, to play devil's advocate, I completely agree. I think it doesn't make sense to make a £50 million signing, but we've got a player in Hudson-Odoi. He just hasn't matured, hasn't developed. But partially not down to him, to the Achilles injury, but I don't. If the right offer came in for Hudson-Odoi, right, loan or buy with option to buy back,
I think that
I'd think about it.
I think Hudson-Odoi, I thought he was really good at the start of last season when he got a run at left wing. And unfortunately, I think I still look at some numbers with Hudson-Odoi, considering the lack of consistent game time he's had to others in this squad. And you still kind of think, maybe it's a case that, I think that he said himself how psychologically damaging that injury was, as long as it, physically, of course, it takes a long time to get back to an ACL. Like, look how long it's taken Ruben to get back to any sort of, like, him just being fit last season is an achievement for him, considering where he was. But I think I've just got tired of the Callum Hudson-Odoi debate, because we've been having the same conversation for it feels like I've been writing the same article about Callum for 3 years.
But this is what I mean.
And I think for the player and for the club, I think it's good that he moves on. I really do, because I think for his own sake, even if it is a loan to begin with, and I prefer it to be in the Premier League, personally.
Really?
Because if it's a loan, I think that part of the reasoning why the loan was blocked last year, or fears over where he could have gone. So say if Callum is on loan this season and we send him to the Bundesliga with Dortmund, let's just say that happens, and Callum completely rips it up, looks like an incredible attacker, has half a pitch to run into, as the Bundesliga naturally gives you, and he looks like a great player. But then you bring him back to the Premier League, and it's a different story at Chelsea, where you're playing against more defenders. Chelsea don't have half a pitch to run into most of the time. It's not as open a game. Teams aren't just playing one style of football, because it is pretty generalised in the Bundesliga, isn't it? Like, most teams want to press, they want to defend at the halfway line, and unfortunately, I don't think you get that. And in the Premier League, if he went to Southampton or went to Leicester, I think that would be a better loan, or a better representation probably of what Callum can do. Because look at Cucurella and Sterling, look how quickly it's taken them to adapt. There is a value in having and signing players who know the league very well. If it was permanent, then I wouldn't mind him going to the Bundesliga. I think that'd be quite exciting to watch. Look at Tammy, look at Tomori, like the way they've moved on and improved. But if Chelsea have any plans of bringing him back, I think it's a smarter move for him to stay in the Premier League personally, because I think it gives him a better test, and we can have a better view of him as a player. To potentially bring him back. But I think for him, he needs to get out of the Chelsea bubble, I think, at this point, because he needs to be playing. You can't have him sitting on the bench for weeks and weeks and weeks and we're all sat here still, because I think a lot of us still don't know how good Callum is, or can't answer the question. Like, we're still like, well, he could be good. Like, some people, I think, like yourself, are kind of like, he's had a bit of time, we've seen enough of him, let's move him on. Whilst others, like I'm more in this camp, think that there is a player there. But none of us...
I agree that there's a player there.
Yeah.
I'm not saying moving on because I think he's average. I'm saying, right, like, this player is there.
Yeah.
But
how long are we going to wait if he's not going to get first choice time to play? Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
we're never going to get an answer, are we? So that's why I think a loan is the best. I don't know if Fofana would be included in anything.
Well, Leicester they really like him, don't they?
They've liked him since last year, I think. A lot of the clubs in for Callum right now, I think, are similar to last year when he wanted to go on loan. And it got blocked. So I think it will be one of those. I mean, maybe someone comes up. We've heard Arsenal linked, but I'm not sure whether Chelsea would want to give Arsenal Callum Hudson-Odoi, a team they're competing with this season.
No, unless Callum wanted to move, I'd never send him there. I don't think there's a value to that one.
And also, if I was Callum, I'd back myself more at. And it's not that players don't back themselves, but could you run into a similar problem at Arsenal, because they've got a lot of options? Bukayo Saka, Martinelli, who's really developing. What is it going to mean for the... Arteta likes young players. He wants to have a young squad to grow, but I don't know for all their development that's going to help. Of course, for Arsenal's depth, I think they'd like it. But I know last week you were not sold on Fofana, like, from Leicester.
I don't think Wesley Fofana is a good move. The £90 million or £80 million they're touted. I'm looking at that going, what the fuck? Like, look, there is no doubt there is a fantastic player there, but you're paying a world record fee for a centre back who hasn't done it at the top level. And I say top level, people say he's done it in the Premier League. He's done it in the Premier League. He's not done it in the Champions League. He's only got a couple of international appearances, and he's not even the first choice for France. You know, he's not done it in the Champions League. He was out with a leg break for half of last season, so he's not going to be the same player coming back. I think it's ridiculous. Like, why would you spend that money on a player that's not proven? You're spending 90 million. Go and try and get the best centre back in the world. You know, if you're spending 90 million, go for Marquinhos. Go for someone like that.
I think they've tried. I think they've tried for Marquinhos. The thing I would say about Fofana, the reason I would personally justify the fee, is look at Kai Havertz. Right, when we spent that money on Kai, 72 million. So we're not talking about a million miles away from what Chelsea are probably going to have to pay to get Fofana out of Leicester, right?
Okay.
And what was sold about Kai at the time was that this is a generational talent. This is someone this is effectively a long-term investment.
Okay.
And you are hoping, I mean, I think the jury's out on Havertz, but that's another conversation.
Yeah. Before we carry on, quickly, how much off the top do you want?
Maybe a little bit.
How long was the last time you got it cut?
Early July, I think it was.
So about a month. So about that much?
Yeah, that's something.
Cool. Yeah, that's good. Right. But yeah, carry on. So you're saying why is it justified?
Yeah. So like for Kai, we spent a lot of money for a player who was coming from a foreign league, and the hope is he's going to be a long-term investment that is going to be a key player for years to come. Like that was the hope. That's why Chelsea spent 12 months trying to sign Kai Havertz. They wanted that move. When Sarri was here, they wanted him. And I think it's the same with Fofana because they've wanted him for a very long time. Like, it's not just a flippant, he's available, let's go and get him. Chelsea have wanted to get him. And I think what you're hoping is given how extortionate fees are becoming for a lot of players, if you sign him now for, let's say, 85 million, I always felt that 85 million roundabout will get you Fofana because I think Leicester would be stupid to turn that money down.
I see the position they're in now where they're not signing anybody.
Yeah, I think what Chelsea would hope is that in 2 years' time, maybe less than that if he really excels, in 2 to 3 years' time, when he's 23, 24, 25, 80 million not only looks sensible, it looks, I mean, will it ever look cheap? I don't know, but I think that I listen to a lot of people who watch Fofana on a regular basis, who've watched him since that injury and still say very good things about him. I think profile-wise, he fits what Tuchel needs on the right side of the defence because you need speed. I think we saw that on Sunday, right? That's why Reece was playing as a right centre-back, and I'm not a massive fan of Reece. As good as he is playing that role, listen, Reece is an exception. I think you can almost play him in goal, and I think he'd calmly do the job because he's so incredible.
Yeah.
But I want him down that wing, going back and forth, threatening players, trying to overload, trying to get into the box, trying to cross.
Which is what happened when we got the second goal.
Yeah, that's because he was moved forward. And I think you buy... I would have wanted Jules Koundé. I don't know why we messed about for so long with that.
Could still get him given how Barcelona is throwing this all out.
But Fofana, I think, is the player that quite clearly Tuchel wants. And I think if he turns out to be a key player in Chelsea's defence for like 6-7 years, and we bring back Levi Colwill, for instance, and he becomes that player as well, you are hopefully setting yourself up for the future with Chelsea and Fofana. I understand a lot of people are going to be raised eyebrows and they'll look at Harry Maguire when United paid that for him. But Harry Maguire and Fofana, like Harry Maguire had it was quite obvious he had limitations when he was at Leicester and he was playing well. He was playing in a back three that he wasn't the most mobile defender. And United are a basket case anyway, and they've kind of exposed him, unfortunately, because they've never played him in the right system to kind of, and it was never worth that fee anyway. But I don't know. I think unfortunately we're at a point in the window where I don't want to see Reece playing as a right centre back a lot, and I don't trust Azpilicueta anymore in these top games. And I think
really,
no, I don't. I think that I think that's why he didn't play on Sunday. Like, could you imagine 2 years ago Dave not playing against Spurs?
No, couldn't.
I think it's because the reason why Tuchel did the switch is because I think he's scared about Dave's mobility and getting back and forth against a player like Son, which of course Reece can do. So I think that the deal is extortionate, yes, but I think that I don't mind overpaying on this one because I think that technically he can grow. I think that he fills the sort of criteria of what I'd want for a Tuchel centre back, and we'll see how it gets done. I'm more sort of raised eyebrows about Gordon than I am about Fofana.
The Gordon transfer is interesting, but it doesn't make sense. I think it's kind of like the fact that we potentially be offloading like a load of dead wood within the squad. You know, talking about Batshuayi going the other way, I'm like, fuck, yeah, have that. That sounds great to me. Because I don't think Michy Batshuayi is any good at all. But you know, it's I'm gonna have to see what happens with it all. To be honest, it's a weird situation. Yeah, that mate.
Sorry.
Yeah, it's a weird situation that's going on with all these transfers. But yeah, I mean, it's gonna be interesting. I think obviously Pulisic to United makes no sense. Anthony Gordon, we've touched on. We've spoken about obviously Wesley Fofana as well a little bit. Not going to bother with Frenkie De Jong because it's just not going to happen.
And I want De Jong to stay at Barca and force Barca to pay the money they owe. So I think it'd be funny. So I don't know if you feel the same. Just quickly on him, I wrote about this the other day. Like I don't know if I don't think that deal makes or breaks Chelsea's window for me. It's kind of like
it feels like an opportunity more than.
And I find it more interesting if we don't get De Jong because of what it could mean for Chukwuemeka potentially getting some minutes. Do we keep one of Billy Gilmore or Ethan Ampadu? I think it's just Conor Gallagher, obviously, who I want to see get a lot of minutes. I think it's just more fun, personally, for me to watch those players get minutes under Tuchel than us spend another 70 million on De Jong, who I think could offer some things that maybe we've lacked, but I think Kovacic, once he gets back fit, will be playing a lot of minutes, and I think there are similarities with Kovacic and De Jong. So again, it's another one that I just sort of go, I'm not going to lose any sleep if we don't sign him.
Yeah, no.
I think he's a good player. I don't think he's essential to what I think Tuchel wants to do.